The Trek Geeks Podcast Network is proud to have Fansets as its presenting sponsor. Fansets is the home for amazing pin collectibles with over 400 officially licensed Star Trek pins and new releases every month. Stay tuned for a special discount code worth 10% off your next order at fansets.com. Fansets, our pins have character. Mentions of ion storms and augments this week may have had you hearkening back to mirror universes and maybe Enterprise. But one thing is for sure, you were probably reminded of life in this country over the last 2 years with pandemics. So pull up a heat lamp and get happy with us. I'm Mike Bovey, and this is Discovering Trek, Strange New Worlds. Hit it. Thanks for joining us on Discovering Trek, the Star Trek Universe companion, presented by Fansets. This week, shall we say there was more light shed on a couple of characters as we learn the backstory of Una and Mbenga? Yeah, I'll be here all week. We also get to see a little bit of Chapel thinking on her feet, helping Una come up with the cure. And I'm sure there's many out there that wish she had worked for the CDC over the past few years. Well, as always, we have a guest host this week, and he's no stranger to Discovering Trek. He's been hanging out in the Picard section for the last 10 weeks, and some reason he wanted to come back and have to deal with me again. From Deep Space Pride, we have Mike Thurlow. And Mike, I don't know what brought you to wanting to not only do this, but do it this late. I mean, man, you're a glutton for punishment, I guess.
I mean, we record Deep Space Pride at night a lot of the time, so this isn't any exception. But I'll tell you why I did sign up to do this is because Jamie is not here to thwart and take away all of my ideas. So that's why I'm here this week.
And Jamie, I know you will be listening, so you know that. If Mike could have given an up yours to you, that was it right there. And our recurring co-hosts with me, we first have the man whose marvelous voice made me think that I should hang it up as a podcaster after working with him last week. We got Matthew, and hey, I can't say nothing because, I mean, even I'll tell you what, give some props to Jamie. Jamie sent me a text. He goes, wow, like Matthew brings it with that voice, doesn't he? And I'm like, yeah, I'm toast now.
Oh, well, thank you. I am humbled and honored. In the end, we have a diversity of voices that do podcasts, infinite diversity and infinite combination. We have all different flavors, and that's what makes the podcast so great.
Yeah, I was once on a radio station, and they told me I had a voice for radio, and I think that was just a nice way of saying I had a face for radio. So, and then our second recurring co-host, she always brings her knowledge and her love for these Strange New Worlds characters, and I'm never going to make fun of her, I think, in introduction. So welcome, Yvette. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good to be here again.
I would always make fun of Jamie. And toward the end, I gave it a little bit to Mike, but not too hard. But yeah, Jamie always caught it in the end. Well, why don't you let all the good folks out there know where they can see the show on social media?
Okay. If you like to follow the show on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Discovering Trek or on Facebook. You can join the conversation on Camp Kittimer, answer a few simple questions, and our admins Haley, Jackie, and Fark will let you in. A reminder that this episode of Discovering Trek provides spoilers for the Strange New Worlds episode, Ghosts of Illyria. If you have not watched yet, head over to the Paramount Plus and watch the episode and head back. Failure to do so leaves you open to spoilers.
I'm nervous now because I know people are listening more intently to my voice about the synopsis. All right, here we go. Episode 103 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Ghosts of Illyria, aired May 19th, 2022. It was written by Kayla Cooper and Bill Wolkoff and is directed by Leslie Hope. The Enterprise encounters a contagion that ravages the ship. One by one, the entire crew is incapacitated, except for number one, Una Chin Riley, who must now confront a secret she's been hiding as she races to find a cure.
All right. Well, we always start off with our guest. So, Mike, for Ghosts of Illyria, thumbs up or thumbs down, and why do you feel that way?
Well, I give this episode two thumbs up. I have watched it 3 or 4 times now, and I love it. And in fact, I get more and more out of this episode every time I watch it. And also, I've been humming the Strange New Worlds theme or hearing it wherever I go. It's the best theme, I think, outside of Prodigy. So, kudos to Jeff Russo for the theme, but also the music in this episode is phenomenal. So Nami really brings it as well. But yeah, I don't know if any of you read, this was a few years ago, I think it was at the 50th anniversary, they put out a trilogy of books called Legacies.
Yes.
And the first book was all about Una.
Captain.
Yes, Captain. Mm-hmm. And so we learned a lot of information about her then, which I don't remember all of it, but I just remember how robust it was hearing about her. And now we have an episode that's almost entirely about her and her background, and it's phenomenal. I think it's great to learn so much about number one that we never knew. And I love that she has a full name, Una Chin Riley. Hopefully we'll get some more information about her parents, because Chin and Riley seems, there's a mixed parentage there, it would seem.
I'm wondering if she's related to Kevin Riley. Don't what's that song that he was singing in Naked Time rather? Don't Riley. Bring Me Home, Kathleen, or something.
Oh yeah.
I just want to know more about her. I think she was great. Rebecca Romain brings it in this episode. The only thing I really didn't like is I didn't like her uniform. I like her in the other uniform that she likes to wear, the kind of
the zip up thing.
Yeah, it just I think she, but other than that, I loved this episode. I thought we learned a lot about, we did learn a lot about her. We learned a lot about M'Benga, and also some more background on Lon. So Lon and Hemmer continue to be the two characters that I'm still kind of on the fence about, but I will say that this is an Enterprise that I would say is unlike any other, where it's just a crew of a very diverse crew. Like I wrote down a crew of a bunch of weirdos and misfits, but not in such a negative, not in a negative context, but there's just a really diverse crew, and I love it. And you don't vibe with everyone, but I do think that it's a really strong cast. So, but this episode, great, great message if you kind of read into it a little bit more, which really harkens back to the original series and kind of the stories that they were telling with the messages that they were trying to portray to their audience back in the 60s. So yeah, this is a great episode.
Nice. If I remember correctly, in that book series that you were talking about, I believe that's the first time that her name being Una is mentioned. And she was she was named after Una McCormick. But yeah, because she was a captain in the book, and it would be kind of hard to just call her Captain Number One.
I think it was in the autobiography of Spock.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, because didn't Una McCormick write that one?
Yes, she did write that one.
Yeah, so it was that one then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought that's where her name came from. Number one. At first, I was like, "Is that actually her name, or is that like a nickname?" Or
yeah.
Oh,
well, there is a story in number one, and Una kind of goes together. It's a long story.
Yeah, it is.
Like, if you listen,
we'll have to talk about it another time.
Yes, another time, right?
But it just makes the nickname fit so much better. I was like, "Oh, that's clever."
It's there for a reason.
Yeah, you're on with us every week, Matthew, so we can cover it at some point.
All right, we'll do it. I'll have to. Clearly, I haven't done my homework.
Well, this is what 30 years worth of novels, Yvette. That she's been covered in.
Yeah.
So
I guess it has been 30 or 20 something like that.
So
it's astonishing when you think about it that a show can even bring back characters from a failed pilot, not failed, but kind of, you know what I mean? And then reintegrated to like a whole history. I was trying to think of where else that would be, because I was explaining to a friend of mine what Strange New World is and how it, like, where it comes from, and talking about Cage. And I was trying to think of any other example where something like that has even happened. And I couldn't think of any.
You know, the closest thing I can think of, and it's not even television based, would be what they're doing with Marvel now. How they're going back and pulling some obscure characters from comics of long ago and making movies based on them. And I mean, people are eating it up. Yeah. So, you know, it's what we're doing with this too. So, so Yvette, up or down for you on this one?
2 thumbs up, of course. You know, I haven't seen anything I don't like yet. Only thing I guess I'm trying to think. I have one thing I did not like, which isn't a big deal, but the fight scene with Una and La'an, it just looked, it didn't look right. It was something about it was clumsy, you know, and I know she was trying to not hurt her and try to, you know, just stop her, but it looked very clumsy. But that was just tiny. That was it. But every time I look at it, I kind of go, oof, I don't like the way that looks. But that was it. But everything else, of course, the writing, like you said, it was pure science fiction in the true sense of the word. The writing, I love the writing. And the fact that, like we talked about, I love the novels. You know, I grew up on those. And to have a character where now the novels are canon, that always makes me happy, you know, because all of her, because, you know, like you said, we got a little, like 14 minutes of her maybe in the Cage. And now, you know, she's being fleshed out from years of the books, of all the books she was in, even her name. So I just love that, because that, you know, that hasn't been the norm. You know, so I just love that the books are becoming, you know, part of canon. You know, I love the fact that it harks back to, there's some COVID issues in there. There's race issues in there. There's, you know, it's people who feel like they're not seen and they're not worthy. And, you know, it's just, there's so much in this episode. And I think it's one of the shorter ones. There was a lot going on here. And I love that. You know, because you can everybody can get something out of this one.
Yeah. And I saw something as I was scrolling through Twitter tonight. I don't recall who it was that said it, but they said it's the first time that they've ever sat down to watch a Star Trek episode, gotten a full fleshed out story, like episode story, but also gotten character development for 3 characters in one episode. And not just like a line here or a line there, but like good character development in the midst of a good story as well.
Yep. That's some good writing.
Absolutely. All right, Matthew, how about you? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Yeah, thumbs up. At first the episode, by the end of the episode, I was like, I should have trusted it more. When it first started out, I was a bit frustrated because Una is given her first lead or like the first command that we see so far in the show. And it starts off with her being dishonest to her doctor. And I was like, what? Why is that? Why are they making her make these choices? Like, why are they showing her kind of fail? Like, the way I looked at it is like fail in her leadership the first time we see her in command of the ship. And then I realized afterward what they're leading up to. I'm like, oh, okay, I see why this is going on, because we have this other backstory about her genetic modification and a bit of like a Dr. Bashir kind of moment there. But at first I was like, oh, are they like intentionally writing her to be like a poor leader in this first episode where we showcase her as a leader of the ship and in command of the ship. So I was like, oh, I should have trusted it better and stuck with it. It's not, they're not trying to dismiss her leadership abilities. So, but what I was thinking about is the show like really isn't messing around. Like in just in the first 3 episodes, we've revisited, like in the first episode, we have like a big Prime Directive episode and we look at Earth's past and the nuclear war. The second one, we go back and finally give like Uhura a story. And Yvette, you were saying like how long we've been waiting for that to happen. Right. And then all of a sudden we go into this episode and we're going to get into like the eugenics war and all this other Star Trek meat that has become part of the known canon. And it's just like, wow, like they're not taking a break. It's just like pedal to the floor. And so I thought it was a good episode. And Yvette, I just kind of to your point, I was thinking the other thing I was kind of disappointed to see that they had 2 women lead characters fight each other in the one episode where Una's in command again. And I was like, I understand why it happened, but it was kind of one of these, it touched kind of close to one of these other tropes that used to happen in shows where it's like, you couldn't have 2 strong like female characters because they're going to argue with each other because this is like, and stuff like that. And I was like, and so I understand that was sort of the point of this one plot. But when that happened again in the episode, I was kind of like, I don't know how I felt about that, but I understand how it fit into the story about the infection and everything else. But otherwise, I thought it was a great episode, and we learned about M'Benga's past there and that like heartfelt story, and like that was like I guess almost like reminded me of Scotty being stuck in the Dyson sphere, and like, in the transporter stasis. But yeah, good episode.
Yeah. So Yvette, you mentioned about the fight scene being kind of clunky. I'm wondering if it had, so that set was the AR wall set. So I'm wondering if it had anything to do with that. We really haven't seen up to this point any action with that AR wall, if I'm remembering correctly from Discovery, because they're not using it in Picard because they were filming in LA. So I thought that I think the big scene that we got from that was the Species 10C scene when they like met them. So I think this was really the first action scene. So I wonder if that had anything to do with it. I don't know. I just happened to think of that when you were mentioning this. Oh yeah, engineering set. That's all, except for the set pieces in the foreground. It's all that AR wall. So,
right.
So for me, it was also definitely an up for a lot of the same reasons that you all said. I mean, the writing was very strong, and like you said, Matthew, I mean, they've come out swinging already. And, one of the things that I think has been really cool in listening to the interviews that have been done about this so far, like Akiva Goldsman has been partial showrunner for Picard. He's been a heavy writer and director on Picard. He was used for stuff in Discovery as well. And this was like his sweet spot. Like, this is what he always wanted to do. Not saying that the stuff that he did on Discovery and Picard was bad by any means, but this is his heart. So I really think that that's what we're seeing right now is like this buildup of what he's wanted to do for so many years come out onto the page with this writing staff. I mean, it's like what you and I were talking about, Yvette, how we've been waiting at least 30 plus years for this, if not, back to 64 when the Cage was first made, so,
Well, I wasn't waiting at 64.
No, neither was I.
Oh, okay. Just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Nope. I wasn't even a twinkle in my dad's eye in 64.
Neither was I.
Library computer, data being received.
All right, so key points from this episode. Yvette, why don't you start off on this? What were some key points for you that you thought about here?
My big thing was they kept talking about light, and I kept thinking about bringing secrets into the light. I don't know why. It's a Bible verse also, and I just kept thinking about that. Everything was about this light, and I know it was a disease and everything, but all of these secrets were coming out. So it was a running theme, kind of with everything else. Like I said, there was so much going on, because even with M'Benga's daughter, that was another secret, and he kept her hidden. And even when he went to see her, he closed, the door. He closed his privacy shields in his office, and then brought her out. That was what I always thought of when because I watched it a few times, just like Mike, and that's all I kept thinking about. Bringing secrets into the light.
It's eerie because I'm wondering if, when it comes to the humanity messages part, if you and I are thinking the exact same thing. We'll have to wait and see. Matthew, how about you for key points?
First, I wanted to say that's amazing. I didn't clue into that when I watched the episode, and that makes so much sense. That's quite beautiful, actually, because everyone is so desperate for light, and in this case, for revealing something. The imagery was totally lost on me, obviously, when I saw the episode. What I loved about this is that they call it, like, I like that Pike is willing to question stuff. And he creates this, it's like, if I were on a ship in Starfleet, and I'm thinking about how, as much as Picard kind of raised me as space dad, I don't think now, as an older person, I wanted to say adult, but I always feel uncomfortable calling myself that. But I was like, I don't think Picard and I would actually get along really well. He's way too rigid about stuff. And the Federation's the Federation, it's law. It's just, and he's just the hardliner for it. Whereas Pike's like, okay, you know what? Screw the Prime Directive. We're going to save this planet. Or in this case, he's like, maybe we should take into account what genetic engineering should do. Maybe we shouldn't dismiss a whole group of people because of genetic modification. And I like that the show raised questions like this and asked, and now we actually we have another character who is genetically modified, comes from this history of people who have been genetically modified, and now we're going to bring it in as a question. And I think that those conversations are really good because it makes us think about, how do we properly treat technology in our own society? And you can say, well, in the Federation future, Earth gets nuked in the Third World War. They still use nuclear power in all their ships. They didn't outlaw that. Right. The eugenics war was a part of that, but we decided we're going to do away with genetic modification. But what would we have gained as a result? And we're working with that kind of technology now. That was also, I was thinking, in terms of parallels to COVID, is we have an mRNA based vaccine that we're using now. And that technology might be life-changing. We're thinking it might be cancer treatment. It could be all kinds of stuff. So we're heading down that path now. And what will we do with it? And will we use it well or not? So anyways, I'm glad that question got asked in this episode, because the history around genetic engineering is not always super clear in Star Trek. And now we get to maybe poke at that a little bit.
Poke the bear. Yeah. Mike, key points?
Yeah, I think I really like the interactions that you see between Una and Lan. I think that's one of the highlights for me in this episode, and also just the fact that secrets and hiding is a real part, a strong message in this episode. And I'll talk more about that later. But I really liked how it, right off the bat, when Una calls Lan into the not the ready room, but the conference room or whatever, Lan's prejudice against augments and people who have been genetically modified comes out right away. And Una is surprised by that. She's like, she thought that a person with her kind of history would, be a little bit more open-minded. And so that I think set the stage for kind of the rest of the episode in a lot of ways. And the fight scene, which now that Yvette, now that you call out the fight scene, I did think it was kind of like weak, but I also felt like Lan was kind of sick, and so maybe not as strong as normal. And in this episode, we see how strong Una is. I mean, she picks up Hammer and carries him from the transporter room to sickbay, and she stops Lan's punch with her hand. So Una is incredibly strong. But I feel like maybe Una was playing it down a little so she wouldn't hurt him, knowing I don't know. I watched The Incredibles a few weeks ago, and the young son, they at the end of the story, they let him run the race, but he has to hold back his skills, and that's also part of the message of the story of being sort of similar actually, about being hiding your skills because you could hurt someone potentially. I think that this is sort of the same thing. I think Una is ridiculously strong, and she was holding back because it was Lan, and because they're friends, and because there's this bond and relationship which we get to see later on in the season as well, in 105. So yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of this, is just that discussion that they have, and even in the mess hall towards the end, Lan admits that it was her sickness that brought out her prejudice, but also that it's true, and she's mad at Una for hiding herself from her, and Una says, I've been hiding myself from everyone, from a lot of people for a long time. So I think that through line in the story is really really interesting. And I also just this one of the things I should have mentioned earlier, I love a mystery of the week episode. Like, this is all a mystery. Like, why are people getting sick? What happened to the Illyrians on the planet? Like, who are these, I don't even know what to call them, these fire beings that save Pike and Spock. I just love the fact that this whole episode is just about unraveling mysteries, uncovering things, figuring things out. It's just, for me, this is like classic Star Trek. This is what Next Generation and TOS were all about initially. So I think that was really, really potent for me, and why I've loved watching this episode over and over again. Not only to prepare for this, for doing this podcast, but just for enjoying it. Like, I really, out of the first 5 episodes, I'd pick up any or all of them and just watch them again, just for the pure joy of watching them, because it feels like Star Trek to me. So
Mike, jumping off what you said there, I was another friend of mine. I've been trying to pitch the show to you, and you talked about like how it feels like TNG and stuff. Someone was like, they're like, okay, tell me what it's like. And I was like, imagine you took the original series and you merged it with the spirit of Next Generation, and you'd have this show. That's almost kind of what it feels like. It's almost like a product.
Yeah.
It's the TOS TNG love child.
Yes. With 2022-ish sensibilities.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
I don't see any TNG in here at all. I think TOS and
I think what they're talking about is like story and character development wise, right?
No, they had that in TOS. I love TNG. It's just that I don't think of TNG when I watch this. I just totally think of the original series, I guess. Yeah.
I think
it's probably the characters,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It could be. Some of that might be my own bias coming through, because I've definitely watched TNG more recently than the other, like the original series, and so I could see the aesthetics of that series there. But the spirit of the storytelling for me feels more like Next Generation, especially in terms of like the original series basically only focused on Kirk, Spock, McCoy. Like we never really see stories about any of the other characters, whereas in TNG it would cycle between everyone. You could have a whole Troy story and you'd have a whole Data story, and so when they did an Uhura story, it felt more like that because she would have never come up in a story cycle before, and so that's where I saw like the storytelling structure seemed a little bit more like TNG, and then Mike, like you're saying, more of the 2022 sensibilities in there as well. So that's kind of where I was seeing it from.
Yeah,
I see it too as the futuristic nature of Next Generation over TOS, like the like kind of the advancement of technology, and this is sort of like the next level of that almost, like how amazing the sets are and how beautiful the ship. You know, it's sort of like the evolution. If you really took all the other shows out of it and just looked at like TOS being the basis and Next Gen being the next step, and then now we have Strange New Worlds sort of being like, again, progressing upward and onward with, you know, more futuristic looking, but also, you know, the storytelling, the character development, you know, the storytelling of TOS, the character development of Next Generation. Just a lot of great pieces to this.
Yeah, I agree. So for me, key points, I got to say there were a couple of things that really stood out to me when they were talking about the whole pandemic aspect of it, and Chapel and Mbenga are talking to number one when she tells them that she's an Illyrian, and you know, can you use that to figure out a cure for these people? And she looks at Chapel and she's like, don't go quoting regulations. She's like, I don't care about the regulations. If it's gonna heal everybody, I don't care. You know, the regulations can be damned. I don't care about that. I thought that was an incredible point, that, you know, the two of them are in it more to just help people. And geez, if we had a whole lot more of that over the last 2 years, would we all be in a better place with this pandemic? I thought the conversation between Una and Mbenga before she has to sedate him, the line that he says about prejudice has prevented people from helping each other for centuries with no scientific justification. And then going even further to say, you know, we went out into the stars and instead of getting better, we've just created new bigotries. Man, talk about getting like to the core. And then I really appreciated, you see the compassion that Pike gives to Una when she essentially falls on her sword. And then she has to deal with Mbenga and what he had done with the transporter. And he's like, look, you know, if you just let me spend a little bit of time with my daughter before you turn me in. And she's like, no. And you can see the look on his face. He's like, she's not even going to let me do that. She's like, no, we're going to dedicate power from the warp core just for this so that it doesn't have to happen again. So like she then turns around and uses that same compassion that Pike had in her dealing with him, and so close to each other in the story. I thought it was just a great move of, you know, not that I think we would have thought that she would be like just a by the book person, but that was definitely the character that Roddenberry wrote in 64. You know, if you were going only by that original character Bible, then yeah, maybe she would have been like, yep, out of here. You know, I don't care what Pike did for me. You violated a regulation, you're gone. But really, really nice piece there, I thought.
Doesn't everybody want to have Captain Pike as their boss, though? I mean, that conversation was so amazing to have, like, just to you could feel the empathy and the compassion from him, and also like, regulations be damned, you know. I welcome that discussion. Like, come at me, you know, you're the best in the fleet, you're exemplary. It's just you know, I think it just makes me long for that kind of boss. I wish I'd had that boss in my younger days, and I wish, you know, that I had that kind of mentorship and that, just an amazing relationship between him and Una, and how much he respects her and thinks she's amazing. I mean, just thinks she's top notch.
But can I ask, what do you think he would have been that if he hadn't gone through what he went through with Spock on the planet? Do you think he would have been that forgiving right away? I know he still, thinks she's the best first officer in the fleet, but before he went on that planet, he had a lot of prejudice against the Illyrians. And until
that's a good
went
point.
through everything he went through on the surface with Spock, I don't know if he would have been that same compassionate. I think he still would have been compassionate, but I don't know if he would have been like quick to say, damn, the regulations will just let me worry about that.
Yeah, it might have been like, look, this is going to be a reprimand in your file. I will back you, but we got to do something about this.
Yeah,
you're right. It might have been that way.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, also in the first episode, he was willing to park the Enterprise right above a city.
Yeah, that's true.
So
just show who had the biggest stick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Maybe he needs to have, when it comes to this thing, because the Federation does have, they say prejudice, but it does have a prejudice against genetic engineering, and maybe that probably gets trained.
They have a good reason for it,
Sure.
but it shouldn't be one thing, one rule fits all. But they do have a very good reason. There was a war, and millions of people died. So there is a reason. It's just I just think, it seems like most Federation citizens have this prejudice against Augment. So I don't know if he would have been immediately by her side, to stand up for her immediately. I think he probably would have been there, but I don't think it would have been as easy if he hadn't been through what he went through on the surface. Because he had those prejudices. They all did,
It's interesting that we're going to get into that. Maybe I don't know how much more they're going to get into this in the show around augmentation, but it's like that prejudice is introduced because of what humans did to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that gets introduced into then the Federation Charter and everything else. But we've seen that there's other worlds that can do genetic engineering and do it responsibly, like the Denobulans. Who I think later, why we don't see them later on in other Star Trek. I think one of the explanations that they say is that the Denobulans are never allowed to join the Federation, even though you have flocks like on the Enterprise back in the species exchange or whatever, because they're genetically modified.
Yeah.
So when Mike made the comment about don't we all want Pike as a boss, I was thinking back to what we were talking about in the TNG comparison. And right away, I thought about The Offspring and Picard standing up to Haftel and like telling him, "Yeah, no, we're not giving Data's kid over. I don't care what you do. You can throw the book at me. I'm not letting that happen." A little different, but I mean the attitude of, look, I'm going to support my officer and I'm in it for the long run here.
Well, Picard was not happy.
You're right.
It took a while for him to get to that point too. Now, come on. He was pissed as hell when he found out. So
Data had to ask him if he questions like the mating habits of everyone on board.
Right. So he had to get there too, just like Pike did.
Right. So. Exactly.
I think it's one of the famous double facepalm images of
yes,
Picard.
It is.
It's from that episode, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it is. Oh. All right.
Can we talk about Hammer for a second? This is a character that I appreciate, but I'm struggling to understand the way that he operates and the way that he interacts with others. It's very harsh at times, and no one seems to call him on it. I don't know if we're just assuming that this is an ANR trait.
I'm sorry. Yep.
But it's, the way that he and Una interact in engineering is very interesting. he says, "I can see your expression," and she like, it's just very sarcastic-ish back and forth, and just the way he interacts with Mbenga, and I'm just having a little bit of a challenge with his attitude, and I'm just not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there, that's one of the things that I'm struggling with in this.
So New Trek seems to like its grumpy engineers.
That's true. That's true. We really didn't get to see a lot of the Aenar in Enterprise, but we know that they're part of the Andorians as a race, as a people. And they were some grumpy people in Enterprise. So I mean, maybe that is a trait of the Aenar as well. We had the one that was steering the ship there, and then Jeffrey Combs' kid there. I don't remember, Shran's kid in the last episode that was an Aenar. But yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I agree. I thought of it as like a sarcasm and a very dry humor. Like you can tell in some cases he's trying to play a joke off. It seems like with Una. Like, no, I enjoy walking around the ship and trying to figure out what the issue is, in the dark.
And the other thing I thought was interesting with Hemmer is he's, when they did the lockdown, he snapped his fingers and everybody moved. And I don't know what that's about. I mean, that was really strange to me as well.
For me, it just seemed like they had some kind of protocol for this. And when they heard it, like he snapped his fingers for all of them. All right, we know what we got to do. That was how I took that.
Okay.
I remember that happened. And for a second, I was like, oh, that's not cool. I forgot about it until you brought it up just now. But I can see how, like, if you knew the character well and that, like, he's a much more jovial mood when he was kind of playing around with Uhura when she first comes up, and he's like, I know you're going to ask that because I was precognitive. And he's like, no, because everyone asks. He's kind of joking with her and stuff. But I can see how, like, in a stressful situation that kind of sarcasm on top of everything would add a little bit more stress to it. Right. So I see where you're coming from. Yeah, I might find it hard to work with somebody like that, but I still find him entertaining.
So one other side point here, and we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it, but did you all love these landing party jackets the way I did? Like, I want one, and I want one bad.
Yes.
Yeah, I need one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I need all the jackets.
Yes.
We'd like to take a moment to talk about Fansets, the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network.
Fansets merchandise, as we know, is the leader in pin collectibles for Star Trek, but they offer more than that. In addition to Star Trek, you can find pins for The Big Bang Theory, Scooby-Doo, DC Comics, Batman 66, Harry Potter, and Rick and Morty.
You know what's really shiny and cool? The deltas on the Enterprise crew uniforms right now, and you can get one of your very own at fansets.com. The Deltas Done Right collection features the Enterprise Command Delta that first appeared in season 2 of Discovery in both pin and magnetic form. The newest release from that line is the Delta as seen in the TNG episode Future Imperfect. That's also available in pin or magnetic form. So if deltas are your thing, go out and get some. If they're not, just check out the Fansets website anyway. They've got something for everybody there. So as we always say, go to fansets.com and put a whole bunch of pins in your cart today.
As a listener to the show, you can receive 10% off your next order from Fansets by using code TrekGeeks at checkout. And remember that you receive free shipping to the U.S. on orders $30 or more. Fansets, our pins have character. And we thank Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network.
Okay, so the humanity section of our episode where we talk about what this episode potentially might have taught us about ourselves or people in general. So we'll start with Matthew here.
I think I'll jump back to that the quote you had from Mbenga about bigotry. And you know what? It made me think about when I was a kid watching Star Trek, the very act of being able to go into space, I thought, was because we had left that baggage behind. We were able to rise, against gravity and go into space. Like the boundary of space, the ability to cross that threshold is because we had proven ourselves as a society and left those things back. And so I love the point that he makes. It's like, then why are we going up there and making new bigotries? Like it doesn't make any sense. And so it's cool that we get to catch ourselves a little bit there in the Federation and examine it. It also made me think about how we're going into space now for real and who's leading the charge to do that. And I'm actually kind of really worried about it because that's not how I envisioned we'd be going to space. And so I thought about that, and I thought about that message of what Star Trek tells us of what we should be and strive to be before we start exporting ourselves into the cosmos. And I'm worried that that's not what we're doing now. So that had me thinking about that. So I thought this was a nice message to us now as we are taking more steps into space ourselves. Like, what are we as we're doing that? And I don't think we're doing it when we're at our best selves yet. And it might be something to think about.
Nice. Mike?
So for me, this episode really spoke to secrets and hiding oneself. And I really identified with Una in this respect. She says, the lights are back on, but that doesn't mean we see clearly. People are always hiding things. I told Captain Pike about myself, and he defended me, told me I was exemplary, that he would fight for me. When will it be enough just to be an Illyrian? And I cut out some of the questions in the middle that she was struggling with. But when I rewatched this episode tonight, I was just struck by the fact that she had been hiding herself for a long time. And having come out in my later life as a gay man, that just meant a lot. And I think that meant, I think that the LGBTQ plus community can identify with hiding ourselves and not being able to share it even with, sometimes with people who are close to us, our families or other people. So I thought it was really refreshing to see someone actually struggling with that. And for me, I could empathize with that and also feel validated and seen in a lot of ways. And I think that's one of the beauties of Star Trek, and in particular this episode, is just that idea that I think everyone is just longing to be seen for who they are and who they want to be. And, we still, even in the 23rd century, people are still hiding themselves and still need to, quote unquote, come out of the closet like Una kind of does with Pike and with Lon. And it's interesting because, Pike has a very different, has that, and maybe that's why I like that scene so much, is because not only as a boss, but as someone you're coming out to and telling them who you are, and just the compassion and empathy that he expresses. Maybe that's where I was coming from in that scene, just with feeling that and knowing that, for some people, hopefully for everyone, there's at least one person when they do that gives you Pike's response. But then on the flip side, you have Lon's reaction to this, and how, she's sort of mad at Una for keeping this from her for so long. So I just think that's really like a broad spectrum, other than, no one outrightly rejects her, which is great. And I think that's maybe something in the 23rd century that has gone away. But I think that the struggle to embody who you are truly is a struggle that we continue to have this day, and hopefully maybe by the 23rd century we won't, but I still think it's a great example, and it really meant a lot to me in seeing this play out on an episode of Star Trek.
Very nice. Yvette?
So I have a lot, but I'm not going to go into a lot of it. So the big thing, unfortunately, I got from this is about humanity and the fact that we are a prejudiced species. No matter how enlightened we want to be, we will always find something to be prejudiced about. And I don't think we're ever going to get over that. I think we just have to keep learning. And I think that's kind of sad, but I think that's just who we are. Yeah, it makes me very sad. But I think that is who we are as a species. We have to always learn. We have to always be willing to learn. And I think that's what it did show us, is that we are willing to learn and listen and see people when they're not seen. As a Black person, a Black human, sometimes, I don't feel seen. I want to, it's more of a general statement. I think Black people don't feel like that people see them as humans. We're overlooked. We're killed because of the color of our skin. There's prejudice everywhere. And, I like Mike, he saw that as, his, he as he was coming out to the world as his true gay self. I think Black people say sometimes, I want to be my true self, and unfortunately we have to hide sometimes, not all of us, some of us do, because like Una said, what if I wasn't, I don't know I forgot how she put it. What if I wasn't one of the good ones?
What if I wasn't the hero that
what if I wasn't the hero?
Yep.
Like Black heroes, if you save somebody or you're quote unquote passable for the white masses, you're great. If you're a Michael Jordan, you're a great person. But if you're somebody who's saying like Malcolm X, or somebody who wants to have Black people get up off their feet and know their power, and then white people or the powerful people of the world are, scared of that, or a Black man walking down the street and get shot because a white policeman or somebody is scared of him, that kind of resonated with me too when she was saying those things. That's why I was saying it can affect a lot of people who aren't seen in so many ways. And that's what Star Trek is so great about, and that's what science fiction is so great about. Everybody got something out of that, and that's what I got out of the whole thing, humanity and how sad we are, but how good we can be and how we have to always strive to be better. And unfortunately, there's always people that don't feel seen, and hopefully they have a Captain Pike and, a number one, a Mabenga, hopefully they have those people in their life. The writing in this was just phenomenal, I think. It's a great story, but the way it was written, that's what I got out of the whole thing. And the like I said before, I just thought of a Bible verse when I was watching this, bring the darkness will always come into the light, and that's when I think of this episode, I really think of that.
And this is not my message piece, but I want to dovetail a little bit off of what you were saying and hopefully not go too far in what I say. But as you were saying that, I was thinking how this Enterprise crew that we're looking at right now kind of mirrors our Star Trek community right now. We have all different races, genders, sorry, it's 10 o'clock and I've been up a long time. I'm losing everything here. All kinds of different lifestyles, straight people, gay people, bi people, everything within this community. And you are getting a good amount of people that are accepting and want to have that association with each other, regardless of their differences. But then you get a small portion within the community that's like La'an in the fight scene that attacks that difference. And didn't she say she thought she thought she was an abomination or a monster? It was one of those two words.
She might have said both, I think.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the kind of crap that we see online. And the worst part about that is I don't think those people would act that way to your face, but they've got no problem doing it behind the keyboard. And that's why I said, I hope I don't go too far with this, because I'm sure it'll piss some people off. But you know what? That is not what the show that you claim that you love is about. You look at this crew and the majority of them were accepting of all these different situations, and there was just the one that wasn't accepting, and she even got turned around a little bit there toward the end, realizing, hey, this is my friend. I have to think about this more. And you know what? Maybe that is a message, but that wasn't what I wrote down. So here's what I wrote down. A little bit the same as what Mike was saying, except Mike's was far more personal. And this is why I thought you and I were going along the same lines, Yvette. I thought of a Bible passage too. The truth shall make you free. And you saw the relief almost fall off of number one's shoulders and Mbenga's shoulders when they were able to talk about what they had been hiding. And you go back a little bit further, you saw that in La'an when she came out essentially to Pike in the first episode and said, I was hiding all of this stuff because I didn't want you to think something different of me. And he said, so you didn't even give me a chance. But right away, that kind of the shoulders went down at that point. She didn't have to be so defensive. Pike himself, in being able to talk to some of his command crew about what he's seen, the vision of the future, just being able to have these discussions and talk about the things that might bother you or things that you're hiding from people, it makes you feel better about yourself instead of holding it inside.
Starfleet Command is proud to present you the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor.
Okay, so our awards section, and we'll bring it back to Mike.
I was just doing a double check of names, actually, to make sure I got this right. My first award this week goes to Nami Melamud. This episode, right off the bat, right from the first transporter room scene, all the way to the music underneath Una and Mbenga talking towards the end of the episode. Well, first of all, at the top of the show, the transporter episode, you get that, Chief Kyle says there's an ion storm. You get those feelings of like, oh no, are they going to jump into the mirror universe? But the music underneath it is, I believe, pretty close to like the original series. Whenever there was a transporter problem, there was all of that. I don't know. Just the music underneath it was just amazing, and so definitely calls back to the original series. But then also throughout the episode, the music in it is so great. So huge kudos to Nami. The second shout out for me is Rebecca Romain. This is a complex number one. And Rebecca has embodied this character so incredibly and continues to give it depth. Her performance is powerful throughout this whole episode. As you can kind of see her struggling, and then the relief, as you said, Mike, when she's talking to Pike and when she lets go of what she's hiding. Just a phenomenal acting job from her. I really grew to love and respect her even more in this episode. The other, so I don't want to steal what I think Yvette's gonna do, so I'm gonna go with the visual effects team, because honestly, we've never seen an ion storm quite like that, and it was beautiful. Never throughout, and I didn't realize, Mike, you kind of woke me up to this. Now I'm never going to look at engineering quite the same and realize that they're on that big AR wall. I knew there was something off about it, but I forgot that were filming in Toronto, and I forgot they had the big AR wall. But the on the planet scenes and everything just felt so real. Like I was never, so in Discovery, I think was, this past season, they use it for the first time. I felt like they were just kind of getting warmed up with it, and it felt like there was a screen there at times, or it felt kind of digital. In this episode, I felt none of that. Like the planet, everything they did from the visual effects throughout this episode made me feel like they were on another planet. That everything was just real, and they just so amazing. So they really, whatever they've learned over the year and a half since they've had this AR wall is showing, because it was amazing work done by them. But also the visual effects of the Iron Storm and the Enterprise, flying towards the planet and also at the end flying away from it all. I just thought was really, really great. So I'm gonna stop there.
Matthew.
I really liked the performance this episode by Mabenga. So I believe the actor's name is Babs Olusanmokun. And first of all, it was such like a twist at the end. I didn't know that it would also be part of Mabenga's story all of a sudden right at the end, because you think like all the storylines are wrapped for that episode, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, there's a daughter hidden in the transporter. They're like, wait, what? But his first of all, the actor is awesome, and the character plays such, like, I think very similar in a way, well, not similar, but portrayed differently. It like McCoy, the heart of the ship, like the passionate heart of the ship, and I thought it was great. So that's my shout out. I also wanted to say that I forgot from last week that there is a great line in last week's episode that I forgot about, which I thought right afterwards, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. That was a great line. And I want to use it more often, is when Spock says he diffuses tension with the rigorous application of logic, because it's actually a hilarious line. And I forgot about that one in the last episode. So shout out to that line from the previous week as well.
Nice. Yvette?
Okay, so I have 3 awards. So my first one is it's cultural. So my first one is to Celia Rose Gooding for wearing her scarf to bed. So that's a very black woman thing. We all wear scarves or a bonnet, and for her to do that, it just was, I was like, wait, does she have a scarf on?
That's pretty awesome.
Scarf. So I've never seen anyone actually portray that, and the fact that we're going to be wearing scarves all the way into the future, I'm cool with that. So, and her waves are always sharp. So, yeah, that's my first award. I had to put that in there. My second award is to Ethan Peck, because Spock was killing it with the jokes.
Yes.
I'm arming us with logic. I love it. Okay, we need that. This was a deep episode. Spock was bringing the humor. I'm all for it. My next award, of course, probably Mike was thinking, to the writers. The writing I think I've said it more than I need to. It was just phenomenal. And it just brought us all kinds of ways, a great story. Because even if you didn't get anything out of it, you still got a great story out of it. So those are my three.
You can never talk too much about the writing, especially in an episode like this.
Yeah, exactly.
So I also had three. My first one went to Rebecca Romain. That's kind of an obvious one, but we've talked about this a couple times already. We didn't know anything about the number one character really, and now we're learning more, and she's brought this to the surface, and we feel for her. We had nothing. We thought she was cool, but now we're emotionally attached to her as well. So that was really nice to have that part of the story fleshed out. And for the same reasons, my second one, like Matthew, goes to Babs. Let's see, Olusemokin. How did you say it, Matthew? Because I'm sure
I cheated because I had it up in front of me.
I have it up in front of me too.
And Olusemokin. Yeah, you're probably pronouncing it more. You're probably pronouncing it more correctly than I am.
We just listened to him say it.
Okay. Yeah. And I didn't think to do that before we got on here, but he was awesome in this. Not even just for his story that we get at the end, which was great. But the healing or the healer that we see in him throughout most of this story, and then the regret that he had at the end, saying, I could have been the cause of a number of deaths on the ship. I can't let that happen again, even if it means sacrificing this one person. Which, that was heartbreaking in itself, which is why I think everyone cheered when Una said, nope, we're going to divert power from the warp core to take care of this for you so that we don't ever have to deal with it again. And since Yvette gave the shout out to the writers, I'm going to give a shout out to Leslie Hope, the director of this episode. This could have gone in so many different directions, but she got the A games for a lot of these actors in this episode. Even some of the background players, we see a lot coming out from them, like smashing their heads into windows.
But wait, did anybody get a little Ensign Suter vibes from that guy?
Yeah.
It just remind me of Ensign Suter so much. I'm sorry.
The other thing I thought of, and it was, I think, the first thing that I had in my notes here. I thought the random red shirt, Ensign Lance, was going to die. And sure, he didn't die, but he was the first one to start smashing his face through windows. So shout out to Leslie Hope as well. You have something, Mike?
I was just gonna say that the detail when you're introduced to Ensign Lance, and if you so I watched it the first time on an iPad, so I didn't pick up on the little particles, and I didn't even pick up on the tipped over 2 vials that are in whatever closet he's looking in. So tonight I'm watching it on the big screen, and I was like, whoa. Wow, just those details right off the beginning. But you see the little light particles floating around when he opens it up, you see them floating around, and then the shot kind of focuses in on the 2 vials they're tipped over. I just thought that was incredible. Just to lead off with, it made so much more sense then, like how they became infected, that sort of thing. So it just kind of all pulled together, but yeah.
So he's the Strange New Worlds version of the dummy that took his glove off in Naked Time. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Good.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think there's no doubt that we all are loving on this show right now. And next week, we have another fantastic episode coming up. While on a routine supply mission to a colony planet, the Enterprise comes under attack from an unknown malevolent force. Pike brings all his heart and experience to bear in facing the crisis, but La'an warns him that the enemy cannot be dealt with by conventional Starfleet means. Episode 4 is entitled Memento Mori, and we'll be covering it here for you on Discovering Trek: Strange New Worlds.
Don't forget that you can support Discovering Trek and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network by subscribing to bonus content on Patreon. Get access to unedited audio of all our podcasts and of a lot of other perks. If you'd like to support this and the other member podcasts of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, beam on over to patreon.com/Trek Geeks, where subscriptions start at low as $2 per month. For more great Star Trek discussion, check out the aforementioned member podcasts on the network. In addition to Discovering Trek, there is Trek Geeks, Rewind, Polytreks, 5-Year Mission, Deep Space Pride, Drawn to Trek, Infinite Trek, The Divine Treasury, Sci-Fi Sisters, Science Station 2, with the first link and the newest addition to the network, Con Pod, about Star Trek conventions. You can find all these shows and where to listen on trekgeeks.com/listen or by downloading the Trek Geeks mobile app.
The Trek Geeks Podcast Network. No one talks Trek like we do. So we're 3 weeks into this wonderful show, and we've explored at least 4 separate characters pretty deeply. So who might be next on this path of story building? Make sure you join us each week after viewing Strange New Worlds yourself to hear how we break it down. Be bold, be brave, be courageous, and until next time, never stop discovering.
Music for Discovering Trek is provided by 5-Year Mission. They're writing an original song for each episode of Star Trek. Hear more of their music at 5yearmission.net. Discovering Trek is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network at trekgeeks.com or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.